My name is Margreta McIlvaine, founder and owner of Bridge Between the Worlds Retreat Center, and I would like to personally invite you to come relax, rejuvenate, and expand your consciousness. Join us in a variety of workshops, seminars, and fabulous presenters. Our calendar of events is listed at bridgebetweentheworlds.org.
So welcome. It's very good to see all of you here. I want to tell you about a life-changing experience that I went through about 4 years ago. And of course, I've come to realize since then that many things that didn't necessarily make a lot of sense in my life before have now made a lot more sense. And it's been a wonderful learning experience, to say the least. For one thing, it has completely changed my worldview in every possible way. And I will explain how that happened, and I think you will understand why it is so profound and why it makes sense and stands a very good chance of changing how many people look at things and look at reality and look at the nature of our spirit, our soul, and the whole reason for existence. Take you back to my childhood. I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Was raised in a family. My father was an academic neurosurgeon. He was the head of neurosurgery at Wake Forest. He had trained during the World War II years. In fact, he learned the craft of neurosurgery in the jungles of New Guinea and the Philippines. And so he had a very strong spiritual core. That's what got him through that. A very difficult time. That was an era when you went off to war and you didn't know if you'd have a country to come back to, or even a world to come back to. So quite different from what we face today. And I think that was a lot of what formed him. And he had a strong spiritual sense. He also had a very strong scientific sense. I mean, he had come of age in the 30s and 40s, and you know, the atomic era and everything else that he saw unfold over the next decades. Kind of a resounding period of success for reductive materialist scientific worldview. And yet we'll kind of get to where that's been very misleading as we go through this, and I tell it from my personal learning point of view. Another thing that's important to understand, I had that faith growing up because I grew up in that household and we went to a Methodist church. I remember having very active debates with my 6th grade Sunday school teacher about, you know, God and heaven, and I was getting very interested in science at the time, and I thought I was, you know, so smart and had these wonderful arguments about how science was really kind of replacing religion as kind of the arbiter of what is real and what is not. And I think my 6th grade Sunday school teacher actually was quite smart, and I just didn't realize that there was a much deeper truth than what seemed so simple to me at the time. And so then in my earlier years, I was very much a fan of science, even though I wanted to believe in an afterlife. But more and more in my scientific career as a neurosurgeon, I went to Duke Medical School, finished 1980, then did 7 years of residency training, mainly at Duke, some at Mass General, a fellowship up in Northern England, and then started working at Harvard Medical School, and I was there for almost 15 years. Doing a lot of advanced things in neurosurgery. Really worshipped science in every sense of the word. Another part of my story that will come in especially important later is the fact that I was adopted. I was put up for adoption when I was 4 months old. And that impacted a lot of how I looked at relationships and at the world, and I didn't realize just how much it impacted it, because my father, academic neurosurgeon, told me, of course you don't remember anything that happened when you were weeks and months old. I said, oh, okay, I don't remember. But I know now that, of course, I did remember, and in fact, it absolutely shaped my view of the world. And that played in very heavily, because in 1999, my older son had an interest in tracing our family roots a little more. And it turns out that he got me to search again for my birth mother, which I had tried to do many times in the past and always hit a dead end. And suffice it to say for now that I found out that she was out there. And this was in 2000. And I also found out it was not a good time to come back in her life. And that had a dramatic impact on me. I didn't realize at the time how serious it was, and I'm going to talk about that more later. But one thing that it did very effectively was it absolutely crushed any last hope that there was a loving God behind it all, that there was any benign force in this universe, that there was ever any answer to prayer. So in the year 2000, that died in me. And I can tell you that I went into coma 8 years later, in November of 2008. And 7 days in coma changed my worldview forever. And I'll never, ever doubt that powerful, loving presence again. I think you'll understand why. So I want to take you back to the morning of November 10th of 2008. We had spent 20 years up in the Boston area and then moved down to Virginia for reasons unbeknownst to me, although at the time I thought it was because I had a good private practice opportunity in Lynchburg with two guys that looked like a very good group to work with. And so I've since found out that, of course, we moved here for very different reasons. But it's similar to what Maggie was talking about earlier. We were drawn here for very different reasons, but I didn't know them at the time. So going back now to that Monday morning, it was about 4:30, November of 2008, and I woke up with severe back pain, and it was worse than anything I'd ever felt, indescribable pain. I was barely able to get out of bed and kind of hobble down the hall and get into a warm bath, thinking that maybe that would make me feel better. Didn't work. In fact, I almost couldn't get back out of the tub. I had to put a towel over a rack and pull myself up, and I barely made it back to our bed. And my wife, Holly, then started rubbing my back, and really wasn't doing much good at all. And I didn't know it, but I was really going down fast. And in fact, about 2 hours later, I was starting to slip into coma. I didn't know that at the time. I warned Terry that I had this effect on electronics, but it happens. It's part of NDEs. You carry it for the rest of your life. But so I remember our son Bond, our younger son, who at that time was 10 years old, came in the room, saw that, oh, Dad's still here. I was working in Charlottesville at the time. I was driving up to Charlottesville, and Dad's still home. What's going on? And Bond started rubbing my temples. And when he did, when he touched my head, I felt like he had driven a white-hot railroad spike right through my head. It was just severe pain. And I just screeched in pain. And of course, as a physician, you know, severe back pain, severe headache, you know, I should be thinking meningitis, something like that. But no, I was too far gone. In fact, my last words, I remember Holly wanted to call 911, and I said, "It's a muscle spasm. Don't call 911. Trust me, I'm a doctor." And that was really about it, because that's the last thing I remembered other than telling Bond to have a good day at school, because I thought, gosh, if this is really serious, I might still be in the ER waiting to be seen, you know, when he gets out of school. And that's it. I don't remember anything of the next week. 7 days gone. This was like being hit by a freight train. Didn't have any time to think about it, complain, talk about it. I was gone. And so Holly saw that I was kind of resting, so she decided to let me rest, and she went down and called my colleagues to ask them what to do next, and then decided to give me some downtime. So she came up about 2 hours later, and she opened the door, and I was having a grand mal seizure on the bed, and who knows how long I'd been having that seizure. She did call 911, and they came, and they had a lot of trouble breaking the seizure. They couldn't break it, in fact. They took me seizing into the ER, even though they'd given me a lot of diazepam and Ativan, trying to break it. And one of my colleagues there, Dr. Laurel Potter, who I'd worked with a lot, very good ER doc, she didn't even recognize me when I came in. They had me in this red terry cloth bathrobe, just kind of seizing away and looking like somebody who was really going to die quickly. And she, luckily, she was very good, and she jumped right onto things and very quickly figured that potentially meningitis was the culprit. It turns out my older son, Evan, had been getting me in shape for months before this, which I think is one of the reasons that I survived this whole thing. But he had climbed a 20,000-foot volcano in South America months earlier. He wanted me to go climb it with him, so he was trying to get me in shape, which is no mean feat, but he was doing his best. And the good news is that that probably helped me come through this alive. It was not very good news for the orderlies in the ER that day who had to hold me down for the lumbar puncture, because it took 7 of them to keep me down, and a lot of sedation and everything. And finally, they got the needle in, and out came pus. Of course, I don't remember any of that. I was long gone, although the strangest thing happened that I heard about later. I certainly have no memory of it, but I was just kind of groaning and screaming, no words or anything, for an hour or so in the ER as they were getting me ready to go upstairs. And then at some point I just screamed out, "God help me." And I don't remember it. Everybody there heard it loud and clear as a bell. It was a shock to them because I had not said any word for a few hours at that point. And then I lapsed into coma. They put me on a ventilator, and I spent the next 7 days on a ventilator in the ICU. And if you had asked me before all this happened, you know, how much would a patient remember? You know, given my 20 years of experience in neurosurgery, how much would a patient remember after having a very severe meningitis? I mean, it was so severe that my CSF glucose, which the sugar level in the spinal fluid is normally 60 to 80, and in somebody with a bad case of meningitis, it might be down to 20. And my CSF glucose went down to 1. And everything about my exam that week, the scans, I mean, this was a global wipeout of my cortex, of my neocortex, the part that makes us human, the outer surface of the brain. And if you had asked me before, how much would such a patient remember when they came back? I mean, first I would say, well, they're not going to come back, but since you asked, they're not going to remember a single thing. And I can tell you that when I did finally start to come around 7 days out, I remembered a tremendous amount. But very interesting, I remembered absolutely nothing of my life before coma. I just remembered this incredible adventure that had happened inside of coma. And I want to take you back and tell you what that was like.